Hey, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. Jeremy Rogers here, and I'm Shane Siegel. We're in Glenwood Springs right now, training up for a fundraiser for the Alzheimer's Association, Source to State Line on the Colorado River. We're calling this the longest day in honor of the Alzheimer's Association. Thanks for joining us. We really hope you enjoy this.
We're in Glenwood Springs, and we're doing Source to State Line from Continental Divide to Westwater, Utah. And it's going to be the longest day plus, is what we're going to call it. And we're excited to be here. Thank you. We're going to paddle from basically the Continental Divide outside of Fort Collins and paddle down nonstop about 30 to 40 hours through the entire length of the Colorado River watershed, finishing in Westwater, Colorado. And we actually got this idea.
Westwater, Utah.
Westwater, Utah, exactly.
Just barely.
Sorry. So we're paddling all the way down to Westwater, Utah, and stopping at Westwater Canyon. And we got this inspiration both from two adventure racers, expedition racers here in the U.S., and one of them was Ian Adamson. He set the 24-hour Guinness World Record on this stretch, paddling basically this exact stretch of river from Kremlin, Colorado, all the way down to Moab, Utah. And the record's since been reset several times on the Yukon River up in Canada. And then our other teammates, Ryan Ognebeen and Julian Tonsmere, really gave us the motivation to get started. They paddled this exact stretch during the middle of COVID, and they did it in pack rafts. And pack rafts are basically inflatables that are light enough that they can pack into their backpack. And so they literally started with their feet on the Continental Divide, trekked all the way down to the navigable water, and then jumped in their pack rafts. And certainly they're fast on the ground. They're a little bit slower on the swift water. Shane and I are both former members of the U.S. Canoe and Kayak team and adventure racing teammates together. And really, we enjoy adventure racing because it's really just an expression of what we'd like our lives all to be, compressed into 24 hours, to where you go nonstop like 7-Eleven, run, ride, paddle, climb. We're using map and compass. So establish some of the skills necessary to put this fun little expedition together to support the Alzheimer's Foundation and Mark Mason.
So my key background with this obviously is my adventure racing time and energy that I put in over the years racing with Jeremy. But one key aspect of this adventure that we're doing is we're trying to raise money for the Alzheimer's Association, because the reality is what we're doing in this little longest day adventure that we have is very minor compared to the battle that people with Alzheimer's have. And there's no bigger poster child in our mind of someone that's battling that and doing an amazing job at it than a gentleman known as Mark Macy, who everybody knows as Mace. And I've known Mace for about 15 years and know his son really well. And those of you that are TV buffs may have seen The World's Toughest Race. I raced with both Mace and his son Travis during The World's Toughest Race. And that TV show really highlighted the challenges that Mace has faced with Alzheimer's. Those challenges continue. And we're just happy to be a tiny part of that big picture out here trying to raise some money and bring some awareness to Alzheimer's through our little trials and tribulations as we head down the Colorado River. It's going to take a great amount of teamwork. It's going to take a great amount of patience with each other, because we will both have highs and we're both going to have lows, and we're going to crash and burn, as it were. But one key thing is that boat right there needs to stay in one piece, because to get from the top to the bottom, we have to have that boat. We don't have an extra boat. If we break it, we have to figure out how to patch it. There's going to be duct tape. There's going to be PVC tape. We have a number of small means to make minor patches. But like Jeremy said, that boat is really not designed for heavy whitewater, and we're going to be facing some moderate whitewater. So we're hoping that our whitewater experience will put us in a place where we can more or less fine-tune how we run these rapids, make sure the boat is in key places at key times, so that we avoid smashing into any rocks and basically having the boat sink. Now, to exacerbate that whole mess is that after you've been up for 24 or 30 hours, you start to get pretty cloudy. Your judgment wanes, you start hallucinating, and there's some real challenges that are going to come with that as we get into that. And we're just hoping that one of us, when the other one's having those tough times and hallucinating and not sure where they are, the other one kind of has their act together and can keep us on track. On a similar note, we've tried to outfit that boat to be as comfortable as possible and give us as much control with our legs and our hips and our back, so that if we do have to make some drastic movements with the boat, that we have enough control of it to get it to the left, get it to the right, steer it, and work as a team to avoid all those rocks and pitfalls.
Then Shane, we've talked a lot about how we're going to handle some of the foot travel sections. We've got a long trek off the Continental Divide. Then we've got some really shallow navigable water that's barely paddleable up in Byers Canyon. And then we get to Kremling, Colorado, where we essentially have to portage, or French for hike, with the kayak about 5 miles down the railroad track. So what are some of your systems that you envision? How are we going to do that?
Well, you've really done the bulk of the work on that. One of the systems we're going to use is the good old-fashioned take the boat, throw it over your shoulder, and carry it. And while we have these other systems that we're trying to incorporate to ease and smooth that process, good old grit is going to get through us. And frankly, this is just another testament to why we're doing this, because we feel like this feeds in to the challenges that those with Alzheimer's have. They have to grit through things, they have to challenge themselves, and they have to make things work when they don't actually have all the pieces of the puzzle. That being said, we have a portage wheel, for example, and we're envisioning that through some of the sections, right? If we have bike paths or we have a little bit of a dirt road or a single track trail, we're actually going to put the portage wheel on that boat and see if we can have one of us in the front of the boat, one of us in the back of the boat, and use that portage wheel to basically roll it through those areas. The second brilliant idea that I think Jeremy came up with, I'm going to let you tell him about, is that we've got to go through a couple sections where there's some railroad tracks, and we're going to have to portage on those railroad tracks.
So the second portage is basically going to be through Upper Gore Canyon, which is really a notorious Class 5 section of rapids, some of the toughest rapids on the river. And that boat's just way too fragile for that. The risks, it would just destroy the boat. So there's railroad tracks beside it, and we don't want to carry that portage wheel system throughout the entire section. It's about 15-20 pounds. That's about what our kayak is. Our kayak's just under 30 pounds. So we're basically going to use the portage system on some of the upper section, and then we're going to get onto the railroad track. And basically the railroad track is yay wide, and we're just going to run a metal pipe across it. And just like a load bar or a kayak roof rack that you put across the top of your car, we're going to span that across the railroad tracks with a tie-down strap over the kayak, and basically just have a friction-free or low-friction system to drag it down that 5 miles of Gore Canyon. And then we're going to hop back in, and that's really probably the last significant portage that we have to do. There's some other trivial ones that we're just going to shoulder it, but logistically, we were both surprised at just how many real decisions. We're used to doing adventure races where everything's done for us. We kind of have to plan our support ourselves. We're going to do this unsupported, so we've got to plan all of that ourselves on how we're going to manage our food and water and portage supplies. Can't resupply anywhere on the river. So.
Yeah, somewhere over about 200 miles also, as we get pretty deep into the challenge, we're going to experience 3 different dams, and we think one of them may be navigable, but we're pretty confident that 2 of them that will need to portage. And one of the big concerns is that we get to those dams either in the dark or at a point where we're more or less delirious or hallucinating, and have the potential of going over those dams, which could be potentially fatal. So we've been really careful to scout out where those dams are. We're hoping that there's a picture in our mind impregnated of where they're located, so that when we get close, we're going to know that we need to stop, get the boat out, and walk around those areas. So it's one pitfall that'll be sitting on our minds as we get into the later stages of this challenge.
So it raises a good point, Shane. A lot of these sections we're going to be doing at night, the common question is, well, how can that be safe? How do you make that safe? And the reality is, a kayaker pretty much uses their sense of balance. There's a lot of times when we're upside down or right side up, or we can't even see anything, that we have that sense of kayaking, so we really don't need to see, but we certainly need to see dams. We certainly need to be able to see our lines. We are going to have some pretty bright lights for some of the night sections, so that we're going non-stop, so we'll paddle through the entire night. But you guys remember the blind Everest climber Eric Weinmeier from Golden, Colorado? He paddled the Grand Canyon, and essentially blind. He had some audible systems and such that his teammates helped him with. For the most part, you can paddle at night. It's got to stay on the right line, and we'll have some bright lighting systems as well. So.
Boating by braille, as it were.
Exactly.
We hope everybody's ready to go. Let's get on the water.